Welcome back to Lucore Automotive Services. Today, we're going to take this 2JZ powered Supra back apart because our turbos are in and it's time to put it back together. So, I'm going to do a couple maintenance items. We're going to drop this engine and tranny out the bottom, then we're going to reassemble it, put it back together, retune it, make sure it works right, keep moving forward. So if this is the kind of stuff you like, please click like or subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment below if you have any questions. In the meantime, it's time for me to get busy on this. Let's get moving. We got a lot of work to do.
Whenever we take a car like this apart, we typically do it this way. It's not what you normally would see most people do, but again, most people are doing this at home in their own garages and they don't usually have access to a lift. In our world, well, it's easier just to take it apart the way it was put together in the factory. So we loosen a couple of bolts, disconnect some linkages, and pull the engine out with the subframe attached. This way everything is still there. All you got to do is just disconnect your linkages. Now, yes, it would be something we could do, just disconnect it all and pull it out through the nose like everybody else, but in our world, it's actually a little bit easier to do it this way. That way we leave everything just sitting at this point in time on jack stands. We do also have a cart that we use on sometimes, where we just leave it all and we can roll it around and stick it wherever we want to. So this is just our version of the best way to disassemble one of these vehicles. Don't try this at home.
Baby girl's filthy. Needs a bath. It needs put back together. Well, I guess we should hang this on the engine next. And then I'll finish putting it together because all the air tube stuff is complicated. I'll make a couple of these guys. Two of those. I should have two of these, shouldn't I? Need to make a heat shield. I'll have to think about how I want to make that. It's gonna have to be a couple pieces because this is like a pretzel of airflow and nothing is symmetric. Have to think about that. A little more aluminum fab coming up. So we're about ready to put this thing back in the car. Decided to throw a couple turbo blankets on it, and I made some heat shields to cover them up. So you won't be able to see the turbo blankets, but you'll know that they're there. Oh, I covered up one of my bolt holes, didn't I? That's not going to work. We'll cut a hole in it. I'm going to shears that.
Now a lot of people may ask, well, they're just stock twin turbos. Why do you need to put turbo blankets on them? Well, yeah, they're stock twins. Well, quote unquote stock twin turbos, but These suckers create a lot of heat, and typically speaking, heat is not your friend. The way that the intake setup and the turbo setup is on the GTE is the turbos are literally directly below all of the intake piping. So ideally, you want to get as much heat as you possibly can away from the intake track. Now, yes, these intakes then go directly into an intercooler setup, which then routes into the intake, but if you start with a cooler intake charge, you'll maintain a cooler intake charge. So the thought process here is do as much as we can to mitigate any heat soak from the turbos into the intake track, and it'll help us out overall, especially given the fact that we're going to be running a little more boost than what you typically run from the factory.
I guess I should have rolled a couple beads across those, but oh well. It'll do its job just fine. Fuel air spark, right?
What'd you do, Richard?
Hey, it's running. Oh, you're gonna end up wearing it. We're gonna flush that oil out, put some new oil in there, and hopefully this thing doesn't self-destruct. We'll see if she survives. There's a lot of glitter in there. So we had some problems with our turbo. We had a turbo bearing failure, bushing failure, and we took it apart, fixed that, put it all back together. I added some heat shields and some turbo blankets to keep our heat bedded into our turbos and to protect the rubber boots on the intake system. Got it all back together. I changed the oil out. I just ran it for 5 minutes, drained the oil out, change the filter. I'm going to actually do that again just to make sure I have any contaminants out of the engine before we really start running this thing. So going to fire it up, run it for a few minutes, drain the oil again, check it for glitter, and then go from there. So just keep moving forward. Got the coolant all filled up, made a couple little adjustments to little things. I have everything fitting pretty well. I'm pretty happy with how everything's in there. So we'll get this oil cleaned up and we'll go from there. So I've changed the engine oil on this once since it's been put back together. Now it's time to change the oil again, check it for glitter, and hopefully we'll be ready to pull this thing outside finally. Yeah, it's actually looking a lot better now. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. We'll find out when we get it on the dyno, because it'll either go or it'll blow. That's oil, that's from changing it. Okay. Going through, I had it running, I'm checking things over, and I noticed I had an oil leak. Well, I didn't have an oil leak before, but let's see what's going on. So I figured out the oil pressure sensor was leaking, so I gave it about a half a turn just to snug it up, and it didn't really get tighter. I'm like, that's not, I think something's wrong. So I fired it up and my oil leak got worse. Like, oh no, that's not good. So this little fitting here, it adapts the 28 BSPT thread to the 1/8 inch NPT thread, and it actually split right down the side. So I have another one of those coming. They're not really expensive, but it's a time delay because it's going to take, I don't know, 2 to 4 or 5 days to get the part here because nobody here locally had it. So once that's here, we can drive the car out of the bay, shake it down, make sure everything's the way it needs to be. I need to reset the alignment after having the subframe out of it, and we'll get it over to the tuner, get it tuned. Hopefully it'll make proper power now that both turbos are working. I did add some turbo blankets and some heat shields to the turbos, which I think will help control our underhood heat. Didn't really make any other changes, just kind of took it apart, put it back together, assessed any damage that happened. We did have a little bit of heat damage to some of our air inlet tubes, hence the turbo blankets. And yeah, so we're gonna fire this up for round 2 and see where we end up. Hopefully we'll be where we expect to be. You never know what little things are going to cause a small problem. Right now on this one, it was a $5 part. Whatever.
Well, there you go. Rich got the car back done, and I didn't do any work on it at all, which is awesome. But it's really hard to overestimate the amount of damage or potential damage from that stupid little $5 part. If we hadn't caught that when we caught that, I mean, we had the same situation on the Lexus. We had a gasket that went off on the turbo, and it literally blew flames inside the engine bay, melting all kinds of things. But
It
that
did a lot
fitting,
of damage. It actually did a lot of damage.
yeah,
I just read.
it did a lot of damage. But had we had that fitting fail and crack going down the road,
Yeah, it would have been much worse. I mean, the fitting was in a weird spot. It was not like I bumped it taking it apart. And
Right.
I didn't notice it leaking when we took it apart. So
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I bumped it and it split.
I mean, it doesn't. There's literally nothing over there that you touch. There's an oil filter, and that's it.
I saw it was leaking when I fired it up, like the third time I fired it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, I guess maybe it's loose. And I tightened it and it got worse. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not a loose problem.
So,
Sure enough, it was splitting too, right down the side.
fortunately, we discovered that issue before the thing evacuated all the oil while it was driving down the road, or God only knows what else.
lit on fire and spun into a ditch. But
Wet the tires down
Right.
with oil.
anyway, we avoided that conversation entirely by replacing the little $5 part. Spent $10 to get the $5 part here quickly, but we got it. So the car is now on the dyno. So that will be the next video you guys get to see of this Mark III Supra. Is it back on the rollers at CIA Performance, getting all of its tuning done and making power. And hopefully not having any more problems if we ever have to take that car apart again. So there you go. That's what we did. We put it back together again with new turbos again. We're going to go have some fun next. Thank you very much for watching. Please do comment in the comment section below. Click on that subscribe button. Click on the like button so it lets YouTube know you actually pay attention to what we do and you like it. And we will see you very soon on the dyno video. Take care.
Have a good one, guys.